The Declaration of Independence, July the 4th, 1776, it gives every American the right to, quote, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But what actually makes Americans happy? Reporter Charlene Israel hit the streets to find out.
Happiness, it's something that everyone wants in one form or another. For some, that means having more money. A recent Gallup poll found that 90% of people who make at least $250,000 a year say they are very happy, compared to only 42% of those who make less than $30,000. And what else makes people happy?
What makes me happy is the fact that we are basically allowed to do what we want to do. We have freedom to do what we want to do.
Happiness isn't about money or materialistic things. It's about what's in here.
Family is what makes us happy. Family and kids and just living.
Doing something constructive.
To know that my family's secure and that my bills are paid.
That's good.
That's what makes me happy most.
And what should our leaders be doing as well as not doing to help us pursue happiness? Author Arthur Brooks tackles that question and more in his book, Gross National Happiness: Why Happiness Matters for America and How We Can Get More of It.
Fascinating book, Gross National Happiness. And we're glad to have Arthur Brooks here with us on the program. Arthur, thank you for being with us.
It's a delight to be here. Thank you for having me, Pat.
It is presumed that people get happy when they can quit work and sit back and sip a cool drink and look at the sunset. Did your research bear that out or not?
Well, there's a lot to be said for coming home after a hard day of productive work and praisefully sipping a cool drink and looking at the gift of a sunset. But in point of fact, if we don't have that important work to go to finish the day with, we're going to be miserable people. One of the things that we find when we look at all the data and we survey the research on happiness is that people who are the happiest Americans are those who have the most traditional values, those who take their faith seriously, those who take their families seriously, who understand the importance of freedom, who work hard seriously, and those who take their charity as seriously as they take their work. These are the things with which we really buy our happiness.
Well, in other words, productive work is a progenitor, if I can use a term, of happiness, the people who are productively employed. But it isn't just working, it's something more than work, isn't it?
Well, it's really the sense of success and meaning in our lives. If we can be successful with respect to creating value in what we do, the way that we define it, and value tends to bring us the most happiness when we're creating value in the service to others. That's the kind of work that will bring us the greatest happiness. So doing a job that you don't really care about simply because of the money is a guaranteed path to misery, but doing something that you feel really is service to your family, to your community, to your nation, to God. If you honestly believe that you are creating value in service to others, that will be the work that will bring you enduring joy.
So it isn't giving them another raise. I mean, the money's nice, but that's not the big deal. The big deal is giving them satisfaction to let them know that they're participating in some worthwhile endeavor. Is that it? It's not the money?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know, the nice thing about money is that money is a measure generally for most people of success. One of the reasons that people with more money tend to feel happier than those with less is not because they make more money and they can buy more things. It's because they feel like more successful people. And what that is a challenge to us is understanding what will make us feel successful with respect to serving others and creating value. And when we do that, we can get away entirely from the great tragedy of materialism that ruins so many people's lives.
Well, you've pointed out very clearly in your book about the negative effects of governmental policy. What does the government do to try to encourage happiness that actually limits happiness?
Well, the government has seemed to have gotten away from these core principles from the Founding Fathers, that we are endowed by our Creator with the inalienable right to pursue happiness. It's almost as if our government tells us that we have a right to happiness and we will get happiness by, protecting us from every danger and by taking things that other people earn and giving it to us. These, in point of fact, are the bases of some of the political platforms that we see today. But if you look at the data, you'll find that as much as we like security and as much as we want the goodies because of our grievances when other people have more than we do, when the government enacts these policies and gives these things to us in the long run, we attenuate our happiness as sure as I'm sitting here today.
Well, so the nanny state doesn't work.
The nanny state does not work. In point of fact, what it does is it weakens us in our ability to solve our problems as a society. And, you know, I speak now about the data, not just about some political philosophy. The data say that the more control we feel we have in our lives, in our families, in our communities as individual citizens, the happier we're going to be. The basis of strength and happiness as a nation, which in fact is our patrimony, it's our right to be able to pursue it, is predicated on the idea that we take control, that the government is not in every corner of our lives.
What about the platforms of the political parties? They're not many embrace what you're talking about, including the Republicans, supposed to be small government, et cetera. They've gone big government.
It's true. It's sadly true that both parties are essentially listening to short-termism from the loudest shouting voters, or activists as the case may be. But what you find is that the people around this country, they care about politics, but not nearly as much as the activists and politicians do, or even as much as the activists think that Americans do. People care about their values and about their family life, and they really understand that freedom is critically important, that we need to govern ourselves instead of being governed by an ever-growing government that takes more and more of our resources and tells us what to do. In point of fact, what we really need from both parties is to retrench, to think about our core principles. And furthermore, we have to be very careful about political parties that base their entire popularity on grievance, where grievance groups are the most politically powerful groups, and where whole political parties have all of their power based on making sure that people are stating their grievances as loudly as possible.
Well, you found also something about giving, that happiness depends. You know, Jesus said it's more blessed to give than to receive, and people said, oh, yeah, sure, that's in the Bible, but it doesn't have reality. Well, what does your research show about that?
The data say that the social science anonymous nationwide survey tell us that it is indeed more blessed to give than it is to receive. You know, as a social scientist, I follow the data where they take me in all of my research, but I'll confess that I have a little bit of joy every time it turns out that the data back up the Holy Scripture. And it is never truer than in the case that it is more blessed to give than to receive. People who give get happier, they get healthier, and over the long run, it's an investment strategy that makes them more prosperous. There's no better advice than tithing for people who want to be healthier, happier, and even richer.
Well, the atheists also say that Christians think they're happy because they just don't have enough sense.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've heard this 1,000 times. I do a lot of radio call-in shows, and I tell you, in a lot of places where the radio callers are vexed by my findings, they'll say, well, you know, ignorance is bliss. One of the things that I find, for example, is that political conservatives are literally twice as happy as political liberals in this country. That's largely having to do with the fact that they're more likely to be married, they're more likely to go to their houses of worship, and that they have a different worldview. And they say, well, but they're ignorant, and ignorance is bliss. I say, well, you know, that's up to you. I mean, everybody has to decide who's actually politically right and who's politically wrong. I report the data, and what the data say is those people who have particular values are the happiest Americans living in the tradition according to those dictates of the Founding Fathers.
One last question. Are we moving toward Europe? Is Europe happy? They've got all these things that you talk against, in a sense. They've got control of everything.
Well, you know, there's some evidence that says that people in some Northern European countries are quite happy. Southern Europe tends to be less happy. And so the jury's out on what system is best for Europe. But one of the things that we can say is that based on all of the evidence, that the precepts of entrepreneurship and opportunity and free enterprise work for Americans, and that Americans in their character are truly different than Europeans. So what even might work for the European nanny state will simply not work here.
Well, Arthur, thank you very much. I commend your book. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a fascinating read, Gross National Happiness. Arthur Brooks has done extensive research on this subject, and you will find it very interesting, something you can talk to your friends about over dinner and show that you're knowledgeable.
Fascinating.
It is.
Fascinating. Okay. Well done.